come from a really small town where fashion is not part of the culture at all, and my friends were never into fashion. My family are not interested in fashion at all. Now they are more, but not at that time. And my father was a fisherman and a surfer. Then he opened a surfing school. My mom is a nurse. My brother also has a surfing school, and fashion for us, it was a completely different world. It had nothing to do with any of us. And but yeah, I remember with the arrival of the internet to the town, I started discovering all these shows of McQueen. I started watching shows of Yohji Yamamoto. I started discovering pictures of Yves Saint Laurent, of Balenciaga, and I started really falling in love with this world, with this universe, and these emotions that you can create with a show. It's not just about making a beautiful jacket, which is important, but it's about the emotions that it can convey, or at least for me. And yeah, I've watched Crows that made me cry, and of beauty, of whatever the emotion is, and that's what I aim to do at some point.
Of course, yeah. That it feels like there's such a big disconnect, though, between like finding, or remembering the arrival of the internet to your town and then like finding Lee McQueen. It's like, how did that happen? Were you just interested in clothes and you started like looking around and just happened into that finding like high fashion?
For example, my connection with clothes, or what I remember the most, is that my parents, they had a surfing school. So we had a lot of clothes in the house, but it was surfing clothes. So we had from wetsuits to Billabong, Pukas, Roxy, all this surfing clothing. And also my brother, who used to surf, who used to compete professionally, he was sponsored by this brand. So we always had these clothes. And that was my first connection with fashion in a way. And then also I remember that every time we had to go to the city to see the rest of the family, we always had to dress up in a posh way to be able to go to this restaurant or to be able to go to this, club, place, wherever we were celebrating Christmas. And that to me was almost like creating a character, becoming someone else. I always found that interesting as well. How can you be perceived as a completely different person, or how you have to become a character in order to belong, in quotation marks, because I hate to say that, somewhere. So that I always found interesting. But then the first ever garment, or the first ever, piece that I tried to make was, when you walk around the ocean or the beach, and then you start finding sea glass, these little crystals that come back, the ocean returns back to us from all the bottles that we throw into the ocean. I always used to collect them as a kid. I found them like precious stones, and also the idea of how our dirt, in a way, our pollution comes back as almost little diamonds. And I used to collect them, and I tried to make like a Paco Rabanne inspired top with them, with like silicone on top of organza. It was a mess. It was a mess. But that was the first style that I tried to create, and I ended up doing it for a collection a couple of seasons ago. So it was like a full circle moment that was quite beautiful.
Yeah, as you were talking about it, I was thinking about that top that you made in the glass. Did you use some of your sea glass that you had collected for that piece?
Yeah, I mean, there were sea glass that I used to collect since I was 13, 12 years old. And then at the same time, I asked we have a Facebook group in the town. So I made a post asking for them to like collect all the sea glass of the port, and all the kids sent me bags of them. There's not a single crystal left in my town, and it was beautiful because of the whole meaning and the whole collaborative process and project with all my town. It was really nice.
It makes me think of a message in a bottle, something that somebody kind of put out to sea, and then it finds its way back to land a little bit. It almost kind of makes me think of like part of the journey, and like maybe the journey home, that glass kind of finding its way back onto the shore.
Mm-hmm. And now it's in from Tapia to Paris Fashion Week. A bit like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Your dad being a surfer, I feel like that makes sense to me when I see that the sustainability question is a big deal for you. Do you make that connection between your dad as a surfer to the sustainability part? Because I feel like, surfers, people in the water, particularly, the ocean is where we see some of the biggest issues with the pollution and the garbage.
Mm.
Is that something that your father had a focus on, or something that he was passionate about, and that kind of you were able to imbue that into the story of your work?
I think, that my family being a surfing family is a big part of me trying to be as responsible as possible and sustainable with my brand. But also the fact of coming from a small town where you are surrounded by the ocean, you're surrounded by water, by forest, by nature. It's part of you, it becomes part of you, and you live in it. And I have also friends who they raise cattle. Is that how you say? Like cows. And then a lot of other people in the town, they are fishermen. So it's a really symbiotic connection with who you are and your environment. And my mom, she's always been really thoughtful with everything that she does and how she taught us to respect where we come from and our town, even in terms of how, for example, under the soil of my town, there's one of the biggest reserves of gold in Europe, and there's these massive mining conglomerates or mining businesses that always try to come to the town and destroy, literally dig everything and destroy everything just to get this gold, and then left us with nothing. So we've always been with my mother manifesting and complaining about it, going to the riots in the town. Like, we grew up with that. And also it's something that I try to reflect in my work, not just the idea of sustainability and, for example, working exclusively with dead stock or with sea glass, with repurposed materials, but also I try to reflect that in my work. For example, the surfing culture, it's always, even, for example, the last collection that we did, it was called Surfeur du Soir, Night Surfer. And it was the idea of mixing my both worlds, this idea of my love for surfing and nature, and my love for this Paris classicism, elegance, Helmut Newton style in a way. And even going back to this thing that I mentioned about the gold mine in my town, we made a collection called Song to the Siren that was inspired by this the song from This Mortal Coil. It's one of my favorite songs ever. And the whole collection was based on the colors, the of my hometown, the history of my hometown, the mythology of my hometown. I tried to almost create these sort of creatures that came out of the ocean, and they were ready to fight against these greedy businesses and this greed for gold.
How much have you seen your hometown change over your lifetime from that gold mine?
I mean, thanks God it hasn't happened yet. They keep trying. Every 5 years they come back, and then we always try to, we always try to have to fight against it. But again, wherever there's money, and in this case, wherever there's gold, there's a lot of speculation. But for the moment, our fight is working. They haven't opened it yet. But it sadly affected a lot of the friendship people in the town, because now it made us more divided in terms of who's in favor of the mine, who's against it. And it's sad to see that, because at the end it's just external people trying to come and take our worth in a way.
Yeah, it's one of those, depending on how you look at it, I'm sure it's a difficult subject because there was a gold rush here, and, it kind of built, in a way, it built California to what it is today. But I'm sure there are parts of California that are destroyed because of the industry of gold. But I'm sure in your town, it must feel the same way, right? Because you have people who are wanting to take full advantage of it. And, that would spark, I'm sure, a lot of jobs within the region. But then you also you do have this nature aspect and this want to prevent the industrialization of the town. Am I kind of getting where that divide is coming from?
Yeah, but the thing is, when people talk about jobs, working in a gold mine is not like working in a gold mine 50 years ago. It's not you just get like you start digging yourself. It's all machinery. You have to become an engineer. You have to, you have to study and train for that. And that's not the case in my hometown. There's no engineers, so they would have to bring people from abroad. So I don't think it's going to help anyone eventually. And then if they open this mine, that means that all the surfing industry or the fishermen or the fishing industry or the milk industry, everything that would collapse, that would be destroyed. And also we live a lot thanks to tourism. And also just thinking there's enough gold in the world. Why do we need more gold for it to be stored or saved somewhere in some rich person's bank or whatever? There's no need for it. The gold is in the surface already.
So some of the concern really is about the cultural impact, because you would have to bring in different people from other areas to kind of come and mine the gold. And so there's a worry that the culture would be impacted from it.
Not the culture. I mean, to me, it doesn't bother me that people from abroad come. That's not out of the problem. The problem is that at the end, all these excuses that they use, that they would give jobs to people in the town, it wouldn't happen because you need to be trained properly. You need to, in order to work in a mine. But yeah, it would definitely affect the roots, as you said, yeah, the roots of the culture, yeah, our surfing culture, fishing culture, like what made our town, and what makes us really special, that will be completely lost and destroyed, and yeah, in a hole on the floor.
Yeah, I understand. Tell me a little bit about your mom being a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's an experience that gives you a lot of empathy for people, but I would love to know about your mom.
I mean, my mom, she's the best. Me, I'm a boy's mom, and I'm proud to say it. I love my mom. If she wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am. If she wasn't for her support, uh, yeah, I would have nothing. And she's the first person I talk to every time I have good news, every time I get an opportunity. We have a really, she's my mother and she's my friend. She's my bestie at the same time. And yeah, to me, nurses, not to sound generic, but there are people who, as you said, they have a lot of empathy and they can really relate to your issues. And yeah, I just love that their kindness. And in this case, what I'm like, I think my mom, she always taught us to be really, yeah, to have empathy, to really think of the other person that you're talking to, and to be really polite. I think is also part of their job. They always have to be, taking care of everything. And then it's funny because, for example, every time I talk to her, I remember during the confinement, I would talk to her and complain maybe, oh, the business is not going well, or like talking about fashion issues that I had. And then she would be, oh, I had to give the vaccine to 500 people today in the town. Or she would tell me the real stories of the real world. And that keeps me grounded to be like, oh, why am I complaining about when there's like real issues in the real world? And she's actually taking care of people and helping people in the real help.
Yeah, I feel like especially in the world that you and I are involved in, having that piece of, I guess you could call it reality, or maybe sense that what we're doing is in its own way very important, right? it's important to continue to create art and create work that inspires people. That absolutely has, its own place in our life. And I think it's what makes us human too, right? To be able to create art. But I think it's just as important as designers to have kind of this sense of how the real world is, because I think the beauty really is kind of, putting them together to create this, like beautiful amalgamation of like the human aspect with this more creative aspect.
Mm-hmm. I mean, me, I have clear that I take my jobs really seriously and I love what I do. And it sounds really cliche, but yeah, fashion is my passion. And I love how, as I mentioned before, how can you really convey emotions on people? You can tell incredible, beautiful stories. And it's also an important industry and business. But ultimately, I'm really conscious that at the end of the day, I'm making trousers, you know? So there's a real world out there with real problems. So I think it's important to be aware of it and don't let this foolishness of fashion fool you.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there an art form that you expressed yourself in before you discovered fashion? I mean, were you painting at a young age, or did you like drawing? Was there something that was the almost the window that like opened into what you'd end up be doing with your life?
I always used to draw a lot, actually, yeah. But then it was mostly dancing. I've always been into dancing since I was a really young kid, and I did a Xiringuelu, for example, which is a traditional dance of Asturias. I did modern dance, contemporary dance. Yeah, that was always a big part of me, and I think that struck a chord within even who I am right now and what my vision right now. I still get inspired by a lot of flamenco dances from Spain or the Japanese buto, the Tansiater of Pina Bausch. Like, to me, that dancing when I was a kid really created a passion in me, and it was my music and dance. I would say it was the best way to express myself at that time, I think.
And it also gave you sensitivity to the body,
Mm-hmm.
and that feeling of the body and movement. I mean, that absolutely goes hand in hand with making clothes.
Yeah, to me, this idea of dance, music, and fashion to me is just one thing. At least for me, I don't see any of the three living without the other, and they're like intrinsically linked and connected. Yeah, I completely agree with what you say.
How important is costume in Asturian culture, like with the traditional dances and the other kind of culturally important maybe holidays or things that happen throughout the year?
Hmm. It's important. I mean, we have really incredible traditional costumes, folklore costumes in Asturias. In the whole Spain, actually, there's each region is really, even though it's a small country, it's quite a small country, each region has a really specific culture, tradition, and costumes. In our case, it's I would say that the north of Spain we have a really similar costume, and then on each region there's like a few differences between that makes it different from each other. Something that I really like from our costumes is azabache, which is a stone. It's a Jurassic stone that doesn't exist anymore. There's no mines anymore. It's a really black stone jet. Is it called jet, maybe? Super dark, super black, but super shiny at the same time. And all these costumes were used to be embroidered with that stone. And now you can only work with this stone if you find it on nature. So there's only like little fragments around that you find. And yeah, it's a stone that it was used for protection. For the pilgrims used to have this stone as well for guidance. It has like a lot of witchy connotations to it, and that's something that I find interesting, and I'm connected to it as well.
You use a lot of black in your collections, and I feel that a lot of times your first look of the collections were all black outfits. Am I making a connection that's not there, or is it that, you know, you have it? Is there a connection with that stone that you think about it
Yes,
with color?
yes, and that's the thing. To me, black is the perfect color, not just because, you know, it's chic, traditionally speaking, or whatever, but it's a color that can express from, to me, it's one of the most Spanish colors that you can have. It really reflects the culture of Spain. And it's a color that can reflect both the saddest sorrow manifestation of, you know, being miserable, or of the most dramatic emotion, and then at the same time the happiness, the romanticism, the poetry. Like it's a color that has all the contrast with it, and also it's a color that allows you to really focus on the silhouette, on the essence, on the soul of your references, of what you want to focus. And in my case, on the soul of construction and the silhouettes, that is one of my strengths. And as you said, it's also connected to the azabache. It's connected to that Gothic part of my culture of Spain. And yeah, to me, it's the ultimate color.
And does that Gothic part of your culture come from that more Celtic point of view?
I think it does, but yeah, I think, yeah, in one way it does, but also it comes as well from all these cathedrals, all this architecture that we have, all these paintings that we have from the old Spanish court, from the flamenco, from the matadores, from the bullfighting culture. Yeah, Spain is a really dramatic country and culture, and we have a really weird obsession with both death and life. So yeah, I think it's all connected.
How much are you thinking about mortality within your work?
I don't think about mortality, I think. No, I don't think of mortality when I'm designing. I do have to say that a lot of my references, they can come from maybe a dangerous place. For example, when I talk about the history of bullfighter matadores, even though I don't support at all the suffering of the animals, but the whole culture behind the whole haute couture is high fashion, the costumes that they wear, and this whole idea of risking your life for the idea of being brave, that is super ridiculous, but at the same time is super Spanish. I don't think of mortality, but I think my references come from there. So I don't know if it's connected or not.
I think naturally when we're speaking about nature and, you know, the life of the ocean and different things like that, I think we can't help but sometimes be referencing that, even if we
Yeah.
maybe aren't making a direct reference to it.
Yeah, maybe I do it as you said, but subconsciously without actually thinking. Do you think of mortality, for example, when you design?
Yeah, I think maybe it's the one thing I'm really exploring. Like if you had to keep kind of dissecting the theme or the emotion that I'm coming from, I think it all boils down to that. My dad works with nonprofit organizations, so a lot of my inspiration kind of comes from these trips that I did around the world. I spent a lot of time in Calcutta, India, and
Wow.
that was the moment. Of course, you know, our work is a culmination of our life, right? And our experiences. But if I had to point to particular moments, a lot of them revolve around these times when I was, just kind of like dropped into these really intense situations. So I think with my dad, working with nonprofits, he would help companies or nonprofits raise money around the world. So I would be a part of these, feeding lines in India where we would be handing out the only food like a family might have in the day, or it would be like volunteering at a hospital or, so I always
We need
had,
more people like you and your father in this world.
oh, thanks, Arturo. It can be tough to talk about because it's, I don't ever really want to make it about me. I think the point is that I really want to use my creativity to kind of almost be like a mirror that's like redirecting the light toward that. And
to shine a light of this real issue.
Yeah. So, I didn't have anybody who was in fashion, or art. So very similar to you. I come from a working family, a really incredible family. I feel so blessed that I have and also had, this like really tight support system. So even if everyone didn't always understand what I wanted to do, they backed me up. But my first experiences are experiencing really hard things. I would go with my dad to bail people out of jail or like, take Thanksgiving meals, which Thanksgiving we celebrate in the US, where traditionally you have a turkey meal and it's kind of a big holiday. I was always around, I was around poverty and but I was around giving. And I like that dichotomy of, and when I spent time in India, the people that I was with were the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. So they had the least, but they were able to give the most because what they could give was not a lot. And so it just spoke volumes over traditionally how we feel in or think about what you could give somebody. And so, to go back to what you were asking me is like, those are things that I'm always thinking about. So whether I'm exploring protection, as you mentioned earlier, or I'm exploring like these experiences, it really kind of comes down to the ephemeral nature of the things that I'm doing. But it's really about reflecting that light, as you said.
And now for example, after all these life experiences that you've had, all the things that you've seen, how's the contrast of that and now living in LA, which to me is like almost, I've never been to LA, but it's like the opposite, no, of this.
Yeah, I think in general, you find what you're looking for. And so I love Los Angeles. I could be here forever. If you're looking for this kind of pretentious or like, not that anybody would look for kind of a more pretentious culture within a city, but if you focus on that, I kind of feel like you're going to find it. But if your focus is not on that, it's not something that you really think about. There's incredible, kind, hardworking people in Los Angeles. What the world knows is the industry that made Los Angeles, Hollywood. So I think people can't help but think of Los Angeles in that way. But LA has a gritty nature to it, which I love. It has that glamour as well and everything in between. And that's what I connect with most about LA is just the vastness of the culture and the people here. But I really do believe that you'll find what you're looking for, and you can find incredible people everywhere. You could also find mean people everywhere. But
I mean, that's for sure. Yeah, everywhere here.
Yeah. But it's my experience, it helps me deal with a place like Los Angeles. It's a big city. It can be lonely. And I was talking to Paula Canovas del Vas about this as well. I'm far away from most of our industry because I'm in Los Angeles. You are in Paris, along with much of our peers. And so LA can be lonely, and it can be, you very easily can kind of be pulled into the present and like worried about what you're lacking. But the experiences I had growing up always remind me that it's about something bigger.
Yeah, it puts everything in context, no? I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel like you had a religious experience growing up? I know as you mentioned, the cathedrals is something that's big in Spanish culture at large. Is that something that you resonate with?
My mom's side of the family, they are really religious. And I was raised Christian, but I've never been. And I remember I used to be an altar boy growing up. But I think not because I was a believer or because I believe in God, but because I really like this whole sense of community, of ceremony, and also helping the people of my town, keeping with the traditions of our town alive. More than the idea of religion and serving God or whatever, it's just the idea of community with each other. And I love that. But I'm not I'm not a religious person. I'm not connected to it. But I think being Spanish, that is such a Christian, Catholic, religious country, even if you're not, it's still part of you in a way, because it's part of witnessing your entire life.
Right. Do you feel that sexuality ever caused uh, a gap or like a schism in like kind of a religious experience?
No, because in my case, whether, I'm gay, like I'm openly homosexual, but even if I were not gay, even if I was straight, I wouldn't still not be religious. Like it didn't affect that. Maybe it's part of it, a little part of it, but I just don't agree with the whole business behind the whole almost, let's say, mafia behind the whole idea of religion. For example, in Spain, even though that we're a really Catholic country, we are one of the also most open-minded countries in terms of LGBT rights. And like we were actually one of the first countries in the world to legalize gay marriage. So I think you can live with both. I have gay friends who are super religious and they go to church every Sunday. So yeah, I think it depends as well on your background, your family, your environment. But in my case, it wasn't connected.
Was your family supportive of your sexuality, or is it something that within the town you ended up having a problem with, being from such a small, tight-knit community?
Me, I was lucky that I had some bullying, but not something too crazy, too violent. You always had these random kids calling you faggot. We all had it. But in general, because that's the thing, in such a small town, we're so little people that we all are always together. And if, we are 20 kids, so the 20 kids are always together and they're like family. And we had a really good, there's a sense of community always. Me, for example, I was never into like what is considered to be boys sports or whatever. I was never into football. I was more into feminine considered things like dancing, music, performing, etc., etc., etc. I always knew I was gay since I was born. I knew it. I think the main issue was for me to accept myself more than other people's opinions. Because sometimes I think we tend to think that people judge us more than what they do. And in reality is ourselves judging us. and not allowing us to be who we are. But then at some point, for example, me, I never did this whole coming out thing because I was thinking that why do I have to come out in when my brother who's straight doesn't have to, or my cousin who's straight doesn't have to. So my mom and my brother, they came to Paris and I was like, here's my boyfriend. You can, meet each other. And but it's really interesting now when I see the younger generations and how open-minded they are and how they're like 12-year-old, 13-year-old in high school, and they're super open-minded with their sexuality, with their if they're non-binary, if they feel how they feel. Like it's really inspiring, and it's really an evolution that I wish I could have experienced when I was a kid.
In some ways, I think this is really fascinating how your small town, in a way, it protected you. Whereas I think normally when we think of a small town, we tend to think of it as a very narrow mindset, right? So it's like if you're going against the grain, whether that's your sexuality or it could be any idea that you're expressing, right? But you had the benefit of a close-knit community that it was like a family. And so it's like at the end of the day, like your brother and your sister are like, that's your siblings. So you could get in a fight or something, but you need to make up, right? So it was kind of similar in your situation. Like you were so tight-knit that they were going to accept you regardless.
Yes, because it's more about who you are. And as you said, coming from the freedom that I had in such a small town, it's a freedom that I could have never had in a big city. Even for us, I remember like being 10 years old, my mom opens the door, Ala, go outside, go play. No times, no schedules, come whenever you want. Our idea was to like roll down the mountain, going to the beach, getting dirty around, like throwing stones. It was really a complete freedom. It's something that I'm realizing the more time I spend in a city and the more I see city kids or children raised in cities. It's interesting. How was it for you, for example?
I grew up in a city outside of Seattle in the northwest of the US called Tacoma. Tacoma is if you're counting the greater part of the city, it's a lot of suburb. Mm-hmm. There's probably 800,000 people. So it's the kind of place that you could go somewhere and not know anybody, or you could kind of see new people all the time that you've never seen before. But it also has that small town feeling to it. So because of the work my dad did, I had I guess kind of like a part-time scholarship to a private school. And they knew my dad. So I think I had a bit of your experience in a different way. It was kind of like in a way, it was like the family I didn't choose because it was like my school. So I was kind of around people that all knew my family all the time. So I could go to the movies or something and see people I've never seen before. But most of my day was around people that, knew my sister and my parents and even my grandparents. So I had this unique experience because of the work that he was doing and because of the school that I went to. Because it was a private school, it was smaller, so there were some kids that I went to school for basically 15 years or however long that you're in school, which can be difficult, that can be difficult, and it can be beautiful at the same time because you make lasting friendships. I felt a little bit of the opposite, which was, when I was 18 and I was ready for university, like I felt like I had to get out, not because I was holding something back, but because, or because I couldn't be who I wanted to be or something. But I just kind of felt like I've had 18
Mm.
years in this place, kind of in this smaller thing. I didn't know that I wanted to be in design just yet. I originally was going to study architecture because
Mm-hmm.
I was creative and I didn't know any other jobs where you could be creative. So I ended up moving out from Tacoma. But I couldn't wait to get out, really. Um,
Yeah, I had the same as well. The same experience of after 17 years, you want to discover the world and really explore. But then, for
Absolutely.
example, do you feel like you miss it and you would like to come back to that more like calm? Okay.
I'm completely open. At some point in my life, I just had a son. He's just over a year old.
Oh, wow,
So
baby.
so maybe when things change, right? Like if he's getting older and there was a different place than that we wanted to be, then I'm open to that. But I love Los Angeles. It feels like home now. It's not so much about being from a small place or going back to small, because maybe I could do that later. But I really believe that you need to follow the energy of whatever that it is that you're doing. The fact that you're in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
starting in London and then moving to Paris, like you and I are going where the energy is for where our work
Yeah,
is. And I think that's a really important part about what we do. And I think within any industry.
yeah. You have to be with the. In Spain, we say with the soup is made.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I would love to know
Mm-hmm.
your experience moving to London for CSM. Was that difficult at first? Because now you are thrown into a large city. I mean, was there a bit of a culture shock?
I wouldn't say like a culture shock because I'm quite adaptable. Like I can, I can easily organize and manage myself around. Yeah, it was a different country. I spoke English, but maybe not at the level that I have now, or at the level that I needed for uni. It was a complete different culture. So yeah, there were. I wouldn't say it was tough at the beginning because it wasn't, but there were like a lot of differences from my background. But to me, this whole idea of just going to CSN, that was my dream. I felt like Harry Potter going to Hogwarts every morning. It sounds really stupid, but it's true. I was going to through those walls and I was thinking, wow, my queen started here. I'm having this opportunity. I had the best classmates that I could have ever asked for, that we still are friends today. We were supporting each other, helping each other. I had the best 2-3 years of my life, literally. And I love the city. I love London. I love the accent. I really enjoyed my time there. But for example, to me, the clash was more when I moved to Paris. I thought Paris would be closer to Spanish culture because at first it seems that we would be closer to each other. But then the first year in Paris for me was really tough. The first year, 2 years, they were quite tough. First of all, you moving again to a different city. I started working for Lanvin so then you start working in the industry and you realize the difference between being at uni to really work for a big brand. And also Parisian people are notoriously famous for a character, and it's a city that is tough. It's hard to adapt, and you have to learn how to survive here. But yeah, I'm getting used to it now.
Was there a person, whether that's a classmate of yours or a professor at Central St. Martin's, that really believed in you and kind of like maybe unlocked something that was a big part of your journey to becoming a fashion designer?
I think more than a single person or a tutor. I remember one tutor called Audrey, who she was the first tutor I've ever had in CSM. And me, I came from a really technical, quite basic fashion education prior to CSM. So I remember at some point she like grabbed my hand and she was like, let it go, be free, stop like overthinking every line and stop. So she was important for me. But then in general, I would say that all my classmates, Julio, Dohan, Eddie, Dimitra, like all of them, we really created a group where everyone was so talented, everyone was so dedicated, everyone had such a individual approach and everyone was doing so great and trying their best that already inspires you to fight more and keep, squeezing your mind even more. So yeah, I think, to be honest, that was best than the whole MA thing. The classmates, more than the education you are provided at uni, it was the classmates.
Because you had a community that was pushing each other to be better. Maybe not so much in a competitive way, but it was like a breeding ground for creativity, basically, right?
I mean, it's CSM. There's still a lot of, there's just a lot of bullshit, a lot of competitivity, a lot of like mean girl attitude. But at the end of the day, it depends on your personality. It depends on how you are, how you want to approach it. And in my case, I really didn't care about that. I was, trying to do my best and having fun. And of course, there were some tough times because it's a lot of pressure, a lot of work. But yeah, that was my main focus.
Do you think that you're growing up in the small town, do you feel like that helped you create a community at Central St. Martin's? Because then now you're back to 20 people being in your class, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think coming from where I come from and with the mother that I have, because we're really similar, the education that I had, it really made me super open-minded, talkative. Like I like to, meet people. I'm easier with getting to know people. And yeah, it makes me, I like to also make people feel comfortable and, have a nice time, have a nice conversation. Yeah, I think it's part of me and it helped me and it still helps me today to approach people and approach new adventures and be less judgmental as well.
Sure. Was there a one piece, one dress, one something that you made, and maybe it wasn't till after uni, maybe it was during, that really encapsulated the ideas that you're exploring now? Do you remember when that switch happened?
Yeah, I think there's one piece from my graduate collection, like a jumpsuit, that is the reference one of these torero matador trousers, really high waisted, really like snatch, skin tight, but a bit flare on the bottom. I played with the proportions of it, of how high waisted this trouser can be. And then the trouser would go up and up and up and up until it became some sort of dark, blooming petal trouser that covers half of your face. Like it became something really couture. And I think that piece really represents who I am in terms of the tailoring, the technical part behind, in terms of the minimal drama. It's a really minimal silhouette, but it's super dramatic. In terms of this almost brutal romanticism, it was really severe, but at the same time, it was super, romantic and seductive. It had that contrast. And I would say that piece is becoming one of the signature silhouettes of my work.
When you designed that piece, I mean, did it feel like a monumental moment in your mind?
Yeah, I think in general with the MA collection, and that's what's good about the master's program, that it really, because you are 2 years constantly, you go to bed, you wake up, you're eating, you're in the shower, everything that you're doing, you're constantly thinking and developing this idea of who you are, what are you about, what do you want to communicate. what is your ethos, your values, everything. So this whole collection made me realize this is what I'm about, this is who I am, and it perfectly represents my universe. Even though I have to say that since I came to Paris, I still have that, but my work more right now is much more, it's a bit softer, I think, in a way. A bit more, even more romantic in a more, soft way, I would say, yeah.
Is there a reason that you're exploring a more softer idea now?
I think it's because maybe in London I was really exploring myself. Like I was constantly fighting, not because I was, feeling down or anything, but I was really fighting to really discover who I was. For me, this period of time in London, I really discovered myself creatively, personally. Like it opened my eyes in all the senses. And I think now that I sort of know who I am, I feel more relaxed in a way. And also after working for Lanvin, for example, I remember being able to look at all the archives from Jean Lanvin. And it was my first time really discovering embroidery, different colors, laces. I used to hate lace, and now lace is a signature of my work. Yeah, I think being in Paris and being surrounded by this culture, these buildings, this, constant information, it really informed my aesthetic now.
In a way, because you've discovered yourself, as you said, you're able to explore some of the more like nuances within your own
Yes.
life.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Do you realize that, for example, now that you're in LA, do you feel that your work changed because you are more used to LA, or how?
I've been in LA for about 10 years now, I think it is. And I moved to Los Angeles because I was going to school. I knew that I wanted to make clothing. So I dropped out of university because as I mentioned, I went for architecture, and then I did a architecture internship, and someone there talked me out of doing architecture. He told me that, he said, Drew, you want to be Frank Lloyd Wright, but the reality is you're going to be redoing school gymnasiums and lunchrooms, and which is
really encouraging, eh?
it's it's funny looking back how somebody who was a working architect and this was on I think it was my first or second day of this summer internship I was doing. And at the time I was already making graphic print t-shirts, which was never really me, but I didn't know any other way of getting into clothing. I had no idea what was out there. I was not like you in that, I had not discovered Alexander McQueen or John Galliano yet. My introduction to fashion was Lil Wayne and Pharrell with Bape and streetwear, really. And streetwear was never really me, but that was my first introduction. And so I moved to Los Angeles because I tried producing some things in Seattle, in Tacoma, and there was nobody who really made clothing, not at the level that I wanted to make. So it was either between Los Angeles or New York. I mean, to me, that was, in the mind that I had at the time, Paris or London was out of the question. I don't even know if I considered it. I was like, well, I connect more with Los Angeles. So my experience really is like I discovered myself in LA, as opposed to had an idea of what I was doing and having it change once I moved somewhere. Maybe that experience would happen if I moved to Paris, because now I'm in a new place. I think Los Angeles is a big part of the things that I make now because I discovered things here. I don't really show Los Angeles too much through what I'm making, but I know that it's a big part of what I do.
Is it like Seattle in your references, in your work?
My city that I grew up in was very industrial, so I had, and I grew up in my grandpa's woodworking shop. And
Oh, nice.
the city that I'm from, Tacoma, has, I think, the biggest port on the West Coast. And so it was very industrial. It's a working town. It had anything you could find anything you were looking for, I guess, in terms of industry. Costco, which is a big, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Costco. It's a huge grocery
It's like a
store.
mall, no? Yeah.
It's like a giant grocery store where they just bring everything in on pallets, but it's huge in the US. I'm like not trying to make like local references for you that you don't know, but so I apologize. But like Microsoft, is based in Seattle, and Amazon and Starbucks.
Wow.
So it had a lot of global industry, but my city in particular was a lot of local industry. And so workwear and the uniform is something that I'm always exploring, always referencing, because I grew up around workwear.
That's nice.
I'm curious about Lanvin, how that felt for you to go from school and now you're working at a big house. I mean, what was that transition like for you?
I mean, it was great on one side because, of course, as I mentioned, I was able to look at the archive. I remember this lady, I think her name was Laure. She would come with a book, a white book with all the archives, all the images of Jean Lanvin's creations. And this woman, I think because she was a woman, Jean Lanvin, a lot of people don't, like, it's not such a big name or such a respected name. But she really designed everything and she was the first on doing it, from skin to skinwear to children's wear to homewear, and in all the eras from the 20s to the 80s. It was insane. And seeing the archive was insane. I had amazing colleagues as well at work. But then when I went to Lanvin, it was a period of change. It was in between designers. So it was a bit chaotic. And then there were some issues with management as well. But then at the end of my time there, half of my time it was with Bruno, who was the last creative director that Lanvin had. And when he arrived, things started getting better, and it was much more productive, and it was working. Yeah, I think it was a 50-50 experience. Because again, coming from university, especially from the masters, that everything is about you and you're free to do whatever and bring your own ideas, to then all of a sudden being in an office in front of a laptop or a computer, and then having to follow this hierarchy of how, in order to do something, you have to ask 10 people and you have to do. It was a completely different system. And also there's a lot of toxicity in a lot of fashion environments. So sometimes it was hard to navigate. But it also made me realize what kind of professional I want to be and how I want to treat my teams in the future and how I want to work. So I think there's always a learning experience from anything.
Did you feel like the job started to hinder your creativity because you were now in a more corporate environment?
I would say the first 6 months, yeah. Then when Bruno arrived, I felt that it was much more, like, everything made sense. It was much more organized. So even though you had your more commercial products to design, I was lucky that I was also working on the show. For example, for the first collection that we did for the first presentation, they told me, oh, you work in these pieces. I did those pieces and then I did 10 more because I was motivated. I liked it. And at the end, all of them ended up in the show. So you still have this open window of presenting new things, of presenting new ideas, bringing your own research. So that felt way better. But in a way, I think it makes you because you have to adapt to the creative director's vision. It's not just about your ideas, which on one side is great because it opens your mind to different references, to different worlds. But I think if I had done that for a long time, maybe it would have made me lose my own personality and my own vision. So I think so.
Was there something that you learned from Bruno that you've now taken into your own company?
The whole team, we were treated really well. It was a really good, there were obviously tensions. It was a moment of change, people coming in, people coming out. It was a tricky moment for everyone, and for him, it was his first collection. But in general, it was really good. I think working with him, even though it was for such a short period of time, it opened my eyes in terms of research. Like I remember looking at the mood boards or having to research some stuff, and I was thinking, wow, this is something that I would never look at it. Like I would go through a book or I would go through a magazine and I would skip the page immediately. Yeah, now I look at it again, and even the other day I was looking at my Lanvin portfolio and my research, and I was like, wow, I could use this in order to create something for my brand with my own vision, but use that reference. So it was great to see a completely different point of view from mine.
Yeah. When did you feel like it's time to start my own company?
I was at Lanvin working for 1 year, 1.5 years. After that, the contract finished and I was at home. Nothing was happening. And then I was, I don't want to keep working for other people, at least for now. Like I already had this experience. I know how it is. I'd rather try it now, see if it works with my own brand, with my own business. If it doesn't, at least I can say I tried. Yeah, and then I tried, but COVID arrived. So I officially launched my brand in April of 2020 within the first confinement. So maybe it was not the best timing to launch your own business. But even though I hate to say this, obviously I can relate to all the suffering and all the horrible things that the confinement brought. But for me, creatively, it was a really good time because I was at home, locked, and it really made me sit down, think, have time to, have no distractions, have time to really create a new collection, apply for the Fashion Week calendar, to really work on my vision. Yeah.
I feel the same exact way because COVID really opened up a lot for me.
To be honest, I think maybe this sounds really delusional. I'm a quite delusional person. I like to, but I think we should all agree that maybe every year or every 2 years, we should do the whole world needs to stop for 6 months. It's better for everyone. I don't want to talk about, if you don't have a job, like I'm just dreaming, you know what I mean? But it's good for us. It's good for us to stop. It's good for every industry. It's good for nature. I think it was a really much needed break. And I felt that during the confinement, everyone was talking about, and especially in the fashion industry, we've learned our lesson. We need to produce less. We need to, slow down, smoke and mirrors, because we came back and people were producing even more and more collections and bigger shows and bigger everything. So I think we forgot too quickly. It's a lesson not learned.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Is there a way that we don't have 4 months anymore, right? To disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you practice within your work where you can disconnect? Do you feel like you even need to disconnect in order to be creative?
I think when you're creative and especially when you have your own business, it's always in the back of your mind. It's always there with you. Always. To me, the way I disconnect is pattern cutting or actually sewing. When I'm in front of the paper, even if it's work related, when I'm with my rulers, my pen, my pencil, and with the paper, I'm like transport. I'm just so focused in that present moment in what I have to do. That's the moment where I get most of my ideas, at the moment that I get most of my mojo. I don't know how to say. And then non-fashion related, my way to disconnect is running. Running is if I don't go running, I go mental, I go crazy.
Is it because running kind of allows you to focus on something completely different than the problems or the work that you're doing?
Not really, because so many times I'm running and I find myself thinking, about what I have to do, about this email, or about this pattern, or about whatever that I have to do. But it's just this thing of releasing this tension, this adrenaline, this moment that you take just for yourself. And also with music, so you're like, and yeah, and also I like to run in nature. So it's this idea of being surrounded by, call me tree hugger, but this idea of touch grass of it, like seeing trees going forward, moving, the air on your face. Yeah.
Is that tough in Paris, though?
I don't live in Paris, in central Paris. I live in Montreuil, which is almost like an hour from Paris. There's a little park here that has a little lake and some trees. And there's some spots that when you're running through, it really feels like you're in the forest. So that makes me feel a bit. And there's even a spot that they have 2 sheep and 2 cows. So random. But it makes me feel that I'm back home in Tapia somehow. So
yeah. So that space from central Paris gives you a little bit of space to be able to be in nature.
Yeah.
What was the first opportunity that presented itself to you, and once you started your brand, that felt like, oh, this is going to be a moment?
I mean, definitely, I think for my brand, even though I'm a bit not tired, but I don't like to brag about this dressing celebrities or artists, But for our brand, the moment we dressed Harry Styles for that music video, that was really a breaking point of my brand. Like, a lot of people discovered who I was, and it gave us a lot of visibility. But I have to say that the biggest one, it was when we did the dress for Beyonce. It was a project that I'm the proudest about, and it was really a moment, and it put us really in the map. And from that moment, now I'm getting a lot of opportunities. I'm getting a lot of, things are rolling from that moment. So yeah, I think that was a key moment.
Tell me about how that happened. How did you originally get in touch with her?
That happened, well, she has a team of 30, 50 stylists, I don't know, a lot of them. And I DM'd all of them on Instagram. I emailed all of them that I could find their contacts. I tried to approach them as hard as possible. None of them replied. Not a single soul replied. So then I went to the concert here in Paris for the Renaissance tour. And then I started uploading stories and tagging all of them. But again, none of them replied. But someone replied. It was Michael Handler, who is her personal assistant. So this guy is literally with Beyonce 24/7. And he was like, oh, I love your work. I want to try to maybe, get into styling and do some styling proposal for her. So even for him was a challenge. And we did it on our side. And then he was going to Beyonce and showing her the ideas that we had. And she was truly involved, like truly involved. I did like 5 portfolio proposals with so many ideas, so many derivations, so many fabrics, color variations, until we had the last one, the winner. And then we had 1 month to make it, and yeah, it was intense, but it was the one of the best moments in my career, in my life. Me, I love Beyonce. My mom loves Beyonce. Me and my best friend went to see her in Cardiff performing. I mean, she's fab. And to be able to really dress someone that you admire and that you love, yeah, to me really felt like, okay, I can die happily, at least today. And yeah, it was a big moment.
I love that. How scary was that moment for you? I mean, was there fear involved when you were making this dress? You've now spent all your time, or hours and
Mm-hmm.
hours on putting these portfolios together, reaching out to her team, all of that. And then now you're making the piece. What was going through your
Mm-hmm.
head when you were working on it?
I mean, me, I always get like, when I get the confirmation, I always get 5 minutes of what the fuck. I'm like, what I'm gonna do? I run around in circles for 5 minutes, and then after that, I get super focused and I go on fire. And I have to say that I like pressure and I work well under pressure. So it motivates me to bring it on. So yeah, the moment I got the confirmation, I ran to Paris to find the fabrics, to find the atelier to collaborate with to do it, to find the videographer to do the behind the scenes video, to organize the shooting, to do everything. I quite like that fire that pressure brings.
What does Beyonce mean to you? Or artists like Beyonce that have kind of changed your life, and not necessarily the ones who have given you opportunities from your brand perspective, but what is it that you connect with about Beyonce or someone like that in your life?
I mean, to me, just anyone who's able to make a living out of their own talent or of their own artistry, knowing the amount of hard work and dedication and resilience that goes behind, me, I'm already a fan. I admire that. And of course, Beyonce, I mean, we grew up with Beyonce. She's an icon of our generation. And it's not just her music, it's just her work ethic. Yeah, I mean, every time I only have been to a couple of her shows, but when you leave her concert, you leave thinking, fuck, I have the same hours in a day as she has. So I better use them. Yeah, I mean, she's our workforce and yeah, she's fabulous as well.
I find that other artists, and especially, as creative people, we can see other artists almost like superheroes, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, of course, they're real people. They embody an idea for us. And I think that that connection is so special. So when you get to work with someone that is kind of like a superhero to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that stays with you forever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, because I agree with what you said, this idea of superhero, and I hope I still work with her forever and I love her. But at the same time, I'm realizing that now that my brand is, we had Harry Styles, we had Beyonce, we had Adele, I'm also realizing this obsession, this almost sick and a bit toxic obsession we have with celebrity culture, and how much sometimes, well, a lot of the times, fame and celebrity is becoming the new currency. And it feels that if you don't dress these big artists, the bigger influencer, it means that you're not relevant. It means that you're not worth it. And it's not like that at all. Like, I think it's a double-sided sword, and you need to be aware of what you said. At the end, there are people, they are artists, they are human beings who had these chances and they create this, and they are where they are because of their talent or whatever. But I think it's good to also separate and don't let yourself get carried on by, this whole idea of dressing the stars.
I think you're 100% right. I also think that, our industry does have an obsession with that. And everything is, I think it was Andy Warhol who talked about in the future, everybody's
Yeah,
going to have their 15 minutes of fame. And
exactly.
and now it's really like 15 seconds. How do you fight against that in a way? Do you get discouraged if those opportunities are not coming
Mm.
in because you realizing what you just said, right? That it isn't everything, but we are in an industry that does care about that.
I mean, I'm personally quite lucky to have worked with artists that I admire, whether I like their music or not, but I admire, and they are, I hate the word celebrity, but they're like famous celebrity or artists because they have a talent. So that I respect, but and I hope still happens. But I'm not interested in dressing everyone. Not to sound pretentious, but I'm not interested in what you said again, this idea of everyone is going to get their 15 minutes, 15 seconds of fame. To me, if you're famous or if you're a celebrity, it's because you have a talent. If I don't see that talent, if I don't understand why you are there and I don't understand what your talent is, I'm really not interested. And me, I understand that this whole influencer culture is important in fashion and it's really related. But at the same time, I personally couldn't be less interested in influencers. It's something that is not my cup of tea whatsoever. I have friends who are influencers and I love them and I get along with them and I understand the work, but it doesn't influence me. It's not what I'm in fashion for. It's not what I'm creating for. Also, I don't want to like generalize. There's maybe 5 influencers who are really talented and they have a creative vision. Kudos for them. And yes, but in general, I think fashion has been corrupted and even polluted a lot with this influencer culture and this dependency of celebrity culture. But again, me, I'm lucky that I'm working with people who I love and I admire, and I'm approaching people who I love and admire, and I'm gonna be quite picky with who I work with.
What is inspiring you right now?
I could tell you, but then I would tell you the theme for the next collection, and I cannot say. But I can say it's last year there was this Spanish film director called Carlos Saura who passed away, and he was truly an iconic director in Spain. He created a lot of not just classic movies, with the dialogue screenwriting, but also movies with inspired by classical Spanish music, inspired by flamenco, and it was all modernizing these stories. He was really iconic, and I'm watching a lot of his movies at the moment, and there's one of them that it's really touching a nerve, and I think I'm heading that way.